cleanup of environmental hazards at the Department of Energy's Oak Ridge site is an issue that affects us all. DOE is working to address the issue, but it needs citizen input. One way you can help is to take part in the meetings of the Oak Ridge Site-Specific Advisory Board, a volunteer citizens panel. By attending meetings, you can learn about the cleanup program and voice your opinions. Join us in making our area an even better place to live. For more information, call toll-free or visit us online.
I'd like to welcome everybody to our monthly board meetings. Go over a bit of business first before we get started. Members of the public, we do ask that you sign in at the front, that you wear your name roster, and speak into the microphones when you have questions or comments. In case of emergency, please leave the building through the doors in which you came. There's a secondary exit is available at the rear of the building to the right. The door must be unlocked before exiting, so if you need assistance leaving the building, please contact any staff member wearing a blue evacuation monitor badge. I believe that's Spencer tonight. We do ask that members use your name tents to be recognized. During the presentation, question and answer period, questions will be taken from board members first and then from the public at the microphone. Our next board meeting will be March 14th. It will be held at the Oste Center, and the presentation will focus on the status of the East Tennessee Technology Park cleanup. Tonight's presentation later in the evening is on the general process for development of the FY 2014 budget request for the DOE Oak Ridge Environmental Management Program, and the presenter will be Alan Stokes. At this point, we'll move on to the next section of the agenda. We'll take comments from the Deputy Designated Federal Officer, Sue Cange.
Good evening, everybody. First and foremost, I wanted to introduce 3 new members to the SSAB that are with us tonight, and I think they're all sitting on this side of the table. So I haven't had a chance to say hello and welcome you all individually yet, but I did want to at least announce you're joining the SSAB and say a little bit about you. So first is Jacqueline Hagee. Jacqueline lives in Alcoa and is a financial services representative with First Tennessee Bank. And I understand, Jacqueline, you participate in a variety of United Way campaign activities and also volunteer your time with the Domestic Abuse Shelter Board and the Chamber of Commerce as well. So welcome. We're glad to have you. Second is Corky Stately. Nice to see you, Corky. Corky lives in Oak Ridge and is a teacher with the Oak Ridge City School System. Retired. So I don't believe you were a teacher.
December 30th.
Well, congratulations. Which school did you teach at?
Woodland.
Woodland, okay. I understand you have been a teacher in Oak Ridge since 1987. And you're a member and a past president of the Oak Ridge Education Association and a member of the National Education Association and the Board of Directors of the Tennessee Education Association. And I understand that you previously served on the SSAB from June of 2000 to June of 2002. So welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you. And third is Bob Stansfield. There he is, right smack in the middle. Welcome, Bob. Bob lives in Knoxville and is a retired geologist who's worked with a wide variety of organizations and government entities over your 30-year career. And I understand that you've authored or co-authored numerous hydrogeologic publications, which your expertise should be a valued addition to the board. So welcome to you as well. I just wanted to give an update on a couple of things that are going on across the reservation with regard to projects. I know that there's been some interest in where we are with our plans for commemoration and interpretation of the former K-25 site, or the East Tennessee Technology Park. We did, on February 1st, issue to all of the consulting parties a final memorandum of agreement with an execution plan and also a mitigation plan attached to that memorandum of agreement. The documents are open for a 15-day public comment period, and so that ends on February 15th. We've asked entities to, if they're going to be providing comments, to provide comments that might be new or different from what had previously been submitted, because all previously submitted comments have been factored in and considered before preparation of this final plan. What we plan to do once we get the comments is to provide them to the signatory parties, and then discuss with the signatory parties if they're ready to proceed with signing the memorandum of agreement. So that's, in a nutshell, what the plans are for that plan. This week, actually on Monday, we hosted a visit with the National Park Service that came down to tour the site and talk with us in more detail about what our plans are for commemoration and interpretation. Dave spent the entire day with them, and so I'm going to let him give a real quick summary of what occurred that day.
Yeah, as I'm sure many of you are aware, the Park Service is really doing two things relative to Oak Ridge right now. One is a broader effort to look at the formation of an element of the national park system in Oak Ridge to commemorate all the Manhattan Project history in Oak Ridge. That's not what this group was here for. This group was here to focus on the proposed approach for commemorating history at ETTP specifically. So this group has come down to basically look at our plan, lay eyes on the site, and offer their feedback on the sufficiency, suitability of our plan. They actually have been asked to do this by the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, one of the other signatory parties to the MOA. So it's a formal process that they'll be going through. I believe they expect to be done by March the 6th or the 16th, the 16th, and we'll get their feedback then. But they sent two preservation specialists from their headquarters in Washington and one person up from Atlanta. We walked them through the K-25 facility itself, showed them the fire station second floor area where we've proposed to have some interpretive facilities, briefed them on all elements of the plan, took them out and showed them the Alexander Inn and talked to them a bit about what the plan proposes for that. And then they thanked us for hosting a long day and flew back out. So we look forward to seeing what they have to say. We hope that they'll be supportive of our proposal. That's pretty much it on the Park Service.
Okay, two other things that I wanted to mention quickly. One is that we are expecting the President's budget for fiscal year 13 to be rolled out this coming Monday. That's the 13th. And so I'm sure that there will be information on Monday about at least what the President's budget is for Oak Ridge, again, for fiscal year 13. And also, I just wanted to mention, you might have seen some of this reported in the papers, and if not, I just want to let you all know that with the fiscal year 12 budget, we have been working closely with our new cleanup contractor, UCOR, to see if we can accelerate the start of the characterization activities in the K-27 building. So rather than waiting until we have completed demolition of K-25 before moving to K-27, we have worked with our contractor again to figure out how we can start to transition some of the workers from K-25 over to K-27 and get an early start on characterizing that building and helping to prepare it for eventual demolition. So that is something that we're very excited about. By accelerating the schedule, it will result in a significant cost savings over the life cycle of the project. We're anticipating by starting in fiscal year 12 that we'll be able to save up to $300 million in the life cycle costs for the demolition of that particular building. So we're very excited about that, and I just wanted to include that in my list of information. So with that, Maggie, we'll hand it back.
Does anybody have any questions for Sue? Okay, if not, we'll move back to Dave Adler, our DOE liaison. Dave?
Excuse me. I don't have anything to add beyond what I mentioned before.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to our EPA liaison, Jeff Crane.
Hello, everybody. I'm sitting in for Connie Jones tonight. Couldn't make it, and the only real update I have is just kind of related to the topic on the agenda tonight, and that's the FY 2014 budget development. There's been a lot of meetings from top down with various EPA, state, DOE, and EPA officials, and right now we're doing what we can with the limited budget for 2012, and 2013 appears to be also less than the budget levels that we were seeking in the past before the Recovery Act. And there's consensus on the priority projects of, in particular, K-25 and 27. And it's good news to hear that there's an opportunity possibly to accelerate K-27. I think we'll be right there with DOE trying to make that happen. The area of interest is, of course, 2014 and beyond, trying to move forward post-Recovery Act funding and do more with what we have and seek funds that will enable some of the important priority projects that have been kind of on the table shelved for a while, and that includes some of the significant mercury source reduction activities in Y12, contaminant flux in Bear Creek Valley, and there are big ticket items, as I'm sure you all are aware of. Some of the D&D costs at Y12 are up there, so we hope to be able to work with the other parties carefully and try to get the plans out and get the milestones that will support the needed cleanup work.
Thank you. If there are no questions for Mr. Crane, we'll move on to TDEC with Mr. Rector, Dale Rector.
Dale Rector filling in for my boss, Director John Owsley, for the DOE Oversight Division here in Oak Ridge. I want to remind folks, because you guys forgot it, but the site treatment plan is posted on DOE's website for public comment right now for the Federal Facility Compliance Act. I just wanted to mention that. We've been reviewing the focused feasibility study for the proposed new circular disposal facility, CDF, I guess, and we've got, well, we had a lot of introspection as well as comment to DOE on that, so I think we've come up with some quality comments and we expect to have a good correlation with DOE on that. On K-27, that's good news. What TDEC will do is we'll try to get out ahead and be conscious about the sampling and analysis plan and waste characterization on that new project. So that's about it.
Thank you. If there are no questions for TDEC, we'll move on. We're opening up our public comment period with Casey McMaster.
The public comment period is now open. Derek? Please state your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
All right, my name is Derek Street with the Tennessee Environmental Council, which is an environmental nonprofit that operates here within the state of Tennessee. Recently, we received a grant from the Community Involvement Fund and the New Mexico Community Foundation, which was ultimately provided by DOE to help engage the public in areas affected by DOE-EM environmental remediation. And our goal is to currently get to know the existing lay of the land and introduce ourselves to many of the groups that are operating here, and ultimately find ways to help increase public participation in some of DOE's remediation decisions and find ways to reach out to a broader spectrum of the community. And I'm very interested in finding ways to work with the SSAB in the future and get involved with your public outreach component and be of whatever help I can with the SSAB. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to comment?
Mr. President.
Go ahead, Greg.
Norman. Yeah, young man. You, yes. Sorry about that. This is normally, we don't do this. You said you're operating on a grant and are going to be involved. How long do you anticipate with this grant that you all would want to be involved in the overseeing what you just talked about?
Well, I think the grant is expected to last for about a year.
Okay.
To a year and a half.
Okay. So we can, I mean, you're looking at a time frame of about 18 months max.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm John McFadden. I'm the Executive Director of the Environmental Council. That's provided we can't get more funding. But that's my job, is to continue funding. We really would like to be involved much more long-term than that. Our mission is to educate. That's one of the parts of our mission, so this is really a good project for us. Everything we do, we're working to try to engage the public. So, but we're very interested in being involved in the long term.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Norman Mulvenin. I was formerly the chair of the Citizens Advisory Panel of the Local Oversight Committee, which is now defunct and gone away. I'm here this evening to talk about a little bit about budget and prioritization. I was very pleased to see that Mr. Alan Stokes is going to be our presenter this evening. I've known Alan for almost 15 years, and he was directly involved with us when we were doing this a long time ago. And it was a very pleasant experience. I'm very pleased to see all these people here tonight, especially the new members. We're very happy to have you. And Stacy, it's good to see you back again, too. All right. I think that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. As a Citizens Advisory Board to the Department of Energy on environmental cleanup, we want to encourage the community at large to attend and participate at our board and committee meetings. If you are unable to attend, please send in your questions and comments to the address shown. Appropriate comments and questions will be read during the public comment section of the SSAB meeting and will be given the same consideration by the board and DOE as those given in person. Meeting schedules and various ways to communicate with the ORSSAB can be obtained by calling 241-4583 or 241-4584 or by visiting our website. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the presentation portion of our meeting. Mr. Stokes. Alan is the Deputy Director for the Planning and Baseline Management Division of the Oak Ridge EM Program Office. He is a certified public accountant and has over 25 years of budgeting, estimating, and project controls experience in the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy.
Thank you. Thank you for those kind words. I also thank you for not sharing all of the other names that I've called at work and, for that matter, at home. This is an exciting time of the year for the budget community. It reminds me of the lady who was arriving home or getting home late from work, and after a long hard day she was walking into the kitchen but was holding out hope that by some miracle supper would be on the table when she walked in. Much to her surprise, she walked into a very dirty kitchen. Her husband had tracked dirt all around the floor where he had been working on a project. He left the sink in a very mess where he had cleaned up, and the son's snack still had remnants on the counter. As you can imagine, her hope for a supper had turned to disappointment, to which she wanted to make sure that her husband understood and shared how disappointed she was when she walked in and saw the kitchen. After they had some discussion, she finally reached the point where she told her husband, "I've had all I can take of this, and if you don't start straightening up and do what you're supposed to do, I'm just going to leave you when our son graduates from high school." Now, the husband had been stoically standing there the whole time, started to get a smile creeping up on his lips, to which he calmly replied, "Well, good. Now I finally have something to look forward to." That's kind of the way the budget community feels this time of year. There's a lot of milestones that are being met this time of the year in the budget process, and we look forward to this time of year. I think there's probably no better place to start than to discuss the schedule, the calendar of events, if you will, for the budget process, and we're talking the FY14 budget process. All budget formulation in the government starts in this time of year in the winter. This is the time of year when we get our guidance from headquarters. We don't have the FY14 guidance yet. I tried to check today to see when we might get it. Wasn't able to find out, but it's imminent. We'll get it any time now. And that budget guidance contains our budget targets. That's always an exciting time for the budget community to find out how much money we're going to be able to spend or how much we're going to have to spend. So in addition to getting the guidance from headquarters, this is also the time of year where we're interfacing with our stakeholders and getting input from them. We then formulate and put together our budget request to go to headquarters, and that's done in the April timeframe. Headquarters EM then takes the rest of the spring and early summer consolidating, integrating all of the EM sites budgets. They then submit it to the Department of Energy CFO or Chief Financial Officer, who then spends the rest of the summer consolidating and integrating all of the department's missions budgets. So EM's combined with NNSA, which is combined with science. Department of Energy then sends their budget to OMB, Office of Management and Budget. It goes in September of every year. OMB then spends the fall putting together and integrating all of the cabinet members or departments' budgets for the president, which then ends up going to Congress in February. You can see here it says the first Monday. As Sue had indicated, that would have been last Monday, this previous Monday, but for this year, the schedule was changed. We're going to submit it next Monday. After it goes to Congress, we then wait for the appropriation to come from Congress. The plan is for that to happen by September. But in the 25 years I've been doing this, I've only seen that happen once. Generally, the past 2 years, we've been getting our appropriation in the December-January time frame. So you can see from the start of when we start our planning and development until we actually get our appropriation, that's a 2-year process. It spans 2 years. And during that 2-year process, there's 3 fiscal years, and I guess I should say is I'm assuming everyone understands what the fiscal year time period is for the government, the federal government. It's October 1 to September 30th. While during that 2-year time span, during the budget formulation process, there's 3 fiscal years that we're dealing with. So let's take where we are right now. We just got our FY12 appropriation that Sue just mentioned. That's for us to finish out this fiscal year. We've got the President's budget for FY13 we're going to find out about, and we're also building our FY14 budget. So back to the point, busy time for the budget community. It's also a time of year that we look forward to. The two-year process from start to finish for a budget process, that is a long time, but it's not a straight path. That path takes twists and turns, and it has hills and valleys, as you can see in indicating I've put up here how the FY12 budget has changed over that 2-year period. 2 years ago, when we were planning to start development of the FY12 budget, we were looking at a $450 million budget in planning space. And that actually is the budget we submitted at a target case to headquarters. A year ago, which means a year has transpired, when the budget went to Congress, we were looking at a $400 million budget. And then finally a year later, which was last month, we were very fortunate and blessed and surprised to see that number, which was good for us. I put on here the Recovery Act. That's the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act. We've got $750 million worth of funds back in 2009, and there's still 115 of that left that we're carrying into FY12. We'll probably spend 70 million of that and have 40 million left to carry into 13 when we'll finish up. So you can see there's quite a fluctuation in our planning numbers over a 2-year period. So we have to be ready and flexible to be able to adapt and to replan work as our budget numbers change. This is a further breakdown of the FY12 appropriation that you saw on the previous page, $420 million. There are 2 major appropriations that Oak Ridge gets for EM funding, and you'll hear it referred to as the Environmental Management Defense Appropriation, and then there's this D&D fund. These 2 are separate. We cannot spend money that's appropriated in defense for D&D or vice versa. In addition, Congress puts fences around our defense funding in these areas. PBS stands for Program Baseline Summary. They're logical organizations of work that we have in the EM mission at Oak Ridge. And the U-233, PBS 11Z, this is our work that Isotech is doing for us. This is where we will fund the direct disposition of the U-233 material. And I highlight the fact that there's fences, Congress put these fences up. We're not able to spend this money at ORNL or Y-12. There is without going back to Congress and getting their permission to move that money. That's a minimum of a 9-month process. And by the time we started that, we'll have already ended the fiscal year. PBS 13B is, for the most part, that's our processing, our storage and processing of our transuranic waste. Waste Trend gets the majority of this money to operate the Transuranic Waste Processing Center. UCOR does get some of this money. They're the ones responsible for the storage and the transfer of the transuranic material to the Transuranic Waste Processing Center. This is our security safeguard workforce that Wackenhut provides to maintain security at ETTP. And this is our ORNL and Y-12 money. For FY12, what we're going to be able to fund here is basically the surveillance and maintenance, maintain the EM-owned surplus facilities at Y-12 and ORNL in a safe and stable condition, and also operate the waste treatment and disposal facilities we have at ORNL and Y-12. This is our stakeholder support money to fund TDEC grants and the SSAB. And then this is our money, the D&D fund money, to do the cleanup at ETTP, and this is where we pay for K-25. A major element in doing budget formulation is prioritization. We never get enough money to do all of the work that we want to do or need to do. So we've got to have some way then to decide what work gets done within the budget targets that we have. So that's where prioritization comes in. It helps us say, if I've got 10 tasks to do and I can only afford to do 5, which 5 tasks am I going to fund? And we do that based on how we prioritize our projects. These are a listing we wanted to share with you, the principles that we use and how we decide to prioritize those projects. Which of the 10 items are we going to be able to do with the funding that we have? This should come as no surprise to you because that's basically the EM mission, isn't it? We're here to protect the public and the environment. And we do that by eliminating the threats and off-site contamination. And we do not jeopardize our workers' safety while we're doing that. That is a key. We want our workers to go home in the afternoon as safe and secure as they can be. In addition to the public and environment, obviously we want to comply with all of our regulatory stakeholder commitments that we have, such as the Federal Facility Agreement and Site Treatment Plan. And in addition, any environmental laws and regulations such as circular RCRA and the Clean Water Act. As I mentioned previously, EM has a presence at the Y-12 site, which has a national security NNSA mission, and ORNL, which has science and energy. We have responsibilities there for facilities that are excess facilities that basically EM has title to. We've got to maintain those in a stable and safe condition so that it doesn't impact the science, energy, and NNSA mission at Y-12 and ORNL. And then, of course, we do consider the state and local economies by looking at the assets that the taxpayers have entrusted us with. How do we best utilize those assets, as well as minimizing the impacts to the workforce? There's always going to be a logical conclusion of work that would impact the workforce, but we try to minimize stopping work that would impact one workforce versus starting another. The workforce appreciates that. This is a tool. I would call this a tool that we use to do life cycle planning analysis. It's also a tool that we use to develop our budgets. It brings to mind a gentleman who was watching a fisherman fish, and he noticed that every time he caught a big fish, he threw it back. Every time he caught a small fish, he kept it. And the gentleman was so perplexed by it that he overcame his inhibition of talking to him, went up and asked him, "Why are you throwing away all the big ones and keeping the little ones?" To which the man replied, "I've only got an 18-inch frying pan, so I keep the fish that fits in the pan." Obviously, what tools you have is the most important in being able to do a job. Prior to this dynamic model, we had very limited ability to do effective long-term planning, out-year planning, life cycle analysis. I can remember when Mr. Eschenberg got here and he realized we only had an 18-inch frying pan as our tool. He immediately told my boss, Mr. Howell, "I've got bigger fish to fry, go get me a bigger frying pan." So this is what we came up with. We have captured within this model, and it's an Excel-based spreadsheet, is what this is. We've captured in it all of the scope that we believe is EM, that we're aware of, that is EM's mission to do, all of the cleanup at ORNL Y-12 and finish up ETTP. It includes estimates to do all of that work, as well as a schedule, the time frame that it's going to take to do all of that work. That's all captured in our model. The key to using this model, though, is how are we going to sequence, rack and stack, divide up that work to live within the budget targets that we always get every year. And our tool and mechanism for doing that, of course, is, as I've already previously mentioned, is the prioritization. That's why we got to figure out what our priorities are when we go to build our budgets, constrain our scope and cost within the funding targets that we have. And this tool, this model helps us do that. One of the beauties of this model was we built into it, for those who are schedulers, you're probably familiar with this term, successor, predecessor. Best example I can give you is if we have a facility that needs to come down, the first thing we do is we have to clean it out, then we got to take it down, and then we got to clean the dirt up underneath it. So those are three distinct activities that are involved in cleaning up a building and the soil underneath it. This successor-predecessor relationship keeps those three things linked so that if someone decides, you know what, I want to accelerate the cleanup of the soil underneath a certain building, then you've got to accelerate the removal of the cleanup of the building and the demolition of it. So that if you move one piece of an entire activity or project, then you move all of them. That's a real critical piece so that we maintain schedule logic in our model. Path forward, obviously, as Sue said, we'll get our president's budget next Monday. That's a key piece for us to understand before we can move forward into 14 and out. How much have I got in 13? We've already got the FY12 piece of the puzzle done. Now we need the FY13. We'll get that next week. Then we can proceed to start making model runs. But before that, obviously, as I've discussed, we need that prioritization, which helps us decide what work's going to be of importance in being able to determine where we draw the line on what work can be done with the targets that we have. I believe this is scheduled for March, is it not, Dave? Yes, sometime in March we're going to have that, actually early March. We then get your recommendation for what you would like for the FY14 budget, and we'll submit that along with our budget request to headquarters. Usually it's in the April 15th time frame. That's all I had.
Craig?
Alan, thank you.
Yes, sir.
10 months ago, you gave the briefing on the DMP, I believe, give or take. And when that was briefed, it was a brand-new system.
Mm-hmm.
It's now been
A year.
Circulating for about almost a year.
Yes, sir.
What is the result? I mean, is it as good as you anticipated? Is it better? Is you found some glitches? You know, is it working better as well or worse than anticipated when we talked about it 10 months ago? If that's a fair question now.
Sue can probably answer that better because she's the ultimate user of it and its effectiveness. But I would say, as with any new thing, we've drastically come down the learning curve. Absolutely. We feel like there's still things in it that we would like to improve on to try to automate as much of it as we can. There's still a lot of manual plugging and chugging that we have to do in it. But we find that it's giving us a reasonable 60,000 foot level, altitude level analysis that's helping us in the decision-making process, which Sue would agree?
Yeah, I'd be happy to weigh in. It's funny because I was just saying to someone the other day that the output of the model, although it's a little daunting to look at because it's a rather large spreadsheet that covers a good portion of a wall, is actually something that I use myself. I have one tacked up on my wall for a particular run, and I have referred to it multiple times in the last several months in order to be able to answer questions and to think through the logic of what we're planning and proposing. So I have found it myself to be quite useful, and I know that our federal project directors all have copies in their offices that they've been using as well. So,
okay. Can I get a follow-up to that? Because I remember the presentation by Dave, like I said, it was about 10 months ago, wasn't it? And this was, at that time, presented as a unique DOE tool with hopes it would be expanded to other sites. What is the status of that so that everybody, if you go back to your first slide when all the garbage comes together in that middle block, it would be really neat if everybody was using the same kind of bicycle.
yes, it would. In fact, we have provided copies of some of the outputs to our headquarters, to the head of the budget office, and so that they're aware of what we're doing. And we actually have been identifying other opportunities to share this tool and the types of results that one can receive from it with the other field office managers. So we're not there yet, but we are making plans to better communicate what we've developed and how we think it's been useful for us. So.
And then the last follow-up question, does anybody have a better tool?
Not that
I'm aware of.
Not that I'm aware of. In fact, I think that the tool that we have here in Oak Ridge is probably the best, or at least one of the best, that the complex is currently using within the EM program.
Thank you, Alan.
I would definitely agree with that. Each site will have something unique or different that they would tell you warrants some slightly different tool or methodology that they would prefer to use. Oak Ridge is unique. I know people that come here from other sites constantly hear that, and when they get here, they realize it. We've got multiple sites, multiple missions, multiple contractors, multiple appropriations that other sites don't have to face and deal with. So this tool works the best for us to be able to accommodate all of those.
I thought I'd just offer a ringing endorsement also of the tool, so much so that I actually carry it around with
There it
me.
is.
So I don't know if it's top secret, but I do have a copy here if anybody wants to look at it.
It's pretty much on everybody's wall at 2714. Jeff.
It's an excellent tool, and we really think having that available to us enables us to communicate, like Alan said, some of the what-if scenarios. And, you know, in particular in this budget time frame, you know, there's target budget guidance that comes down, and then there's the what-if scenarios. What if we got more? What if we could do more with this resource? How would that look under various scenarios? And this tool enables us to do that, and that's part of what's really going on right now between the agencies. So I wanted to just state that endorsement. I also wanted to mention another tool that's kind of emerging out of this whole process that's a little behind, I think the original plan was something that helps prioritization as well. And it's, you know, kind of early to say how successful that is, but it does appear to be a real opportunity to see how the factors that I think in one of the earlier slides goes into weighting a project in terms of its priority. And that's, I think you may have heard that activity by the consortium for risk evaluation with stakeholder participation. That process has been underway, and we got their initial review of some of that, their approach to trying to meld all these factors into one simple way, and we're optimistic. It's not perfect at this point, but we think it might be an opportunity, and I wanted to mention that.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation.
Yes, sir.
It was very understandable.
Good.
Very good, very direct, short and to the point. While everybody is patting ourselves on the back, I sit here, and I don't want to be a wet blanket, but since I've been on this board, this budget authorization has continually decreased. This site continues to get less and less of its share of the overall budget, and still 2 and 3 other sites still get the lion's share of the overall budget. While we know that we have multiple missions here, and if we look at our tool, and I think it's a good tool, and encourage headquarters to adopt the tool and make it universally applied throughout the complexes, I think that it would be a little more equitable in terms of authorization for these budgets. So the question is, do we really have someone at headquarters looking at this process of budgets and the way by which other sites are going through their budget allocations and things of that nature? Because surely while we sit here and look at what we've done with what we have, we still get a smaller piece of the pie, and we still have a lot more work than many of these other sites.
You want me to take that, Sue? I can take it. Okay. That's an interesting, good timing question. I just had last month a conversation with a gentleman at headquarters on this very topic. He has been tasked by EM2 to go look at long-range planning, out-year planning for the entire department. And he has been going to each site to look at what is your methodology, what tools do you have, how are you doing it at each site. And we shared with him our model. He has the output, and he knows then that's how we're putting our strategy. He's now doing that across the complex, And his job at the end is going to be to come up with getting some equivalent tools so he can support his management in making those decisions. I just don't have the answer to you what they've decided yet.
Okay.
But he seemed very pleased with our process. As a matter of fact, he is going to every site to look at theirs. He didn't have to come to Oak Ridge. We were able to send him this and discuss it on the phone.
So Ed, just in general, I certainly don't disagree with your observations that it certainly is a fact that our budget has been decreasing over the past several years. And I know that it has, in many cases, been disproportionate to the other sites. I feel compelled to at least mention that the overall EM budget across the entire complex has gone down. It has not remained level or constant. But I do agree that often we believe that we've received a disproportionate amount compared to some of the other sites. Our site is unique. However, every site believes that of their own site. And we do have a lot left to address, but so do the other large sites within the EM complex that are across the country. And it's a matter, when we talk about prioritization, our headquarters has identified a certain ranking of prioritization, and certainly addressing the high-level waste issues that are out at Hanford and at the Savannah River site have, at least historically, been a higher priority for the EM program as a whole than some of the other issues that we have here. We fortunately don't have a high-level waste issue to contend with like some of our other sites. So I'm certainly agreeing with your observations and am working very hard to try to increase the level of awareness at headquarters and elsewhere of the challenges that we have and the needs that we have. And I'm certainly working very hard to try to show that we in Oak Ridge are investment worthy, that the money that is sent here is being used to very good purpose, and that we're able to accomplish a lot with the money that we receive. But we do, of course, all have to recognize what the country is experiencing across the board, and that there are other sites with other challenges that are different from ours. So.
If there is one bright spot to all of this, Sue's right, our budgets have been on the decline for the last few years. FY12 is the first year we started to see it tick back up. And I think that's a direct result at Oak Ridge for Oak Ridge. The $420 million we had is an increase over what we had in fiscal year 11. And I think that's a direct tribute to what work John started and that Sue's picked up and continued.
Bob?
My question actually follows on Ed's comment. I would have made some of the same comments you did. Actually, what is the percentage of the cut of the pie that we get here? What percentage of the entire EM budget, say in FY12?
So the FY12 EM budget complex-wide was 5.6 or 5.7 billion dollars.
I was going to say 5.7.
$5.7 billion for the entire complex.
It's less than 10%.
Yes.
Yeah, 8%.
Yeah.
That range.
Yeah.
Ron?
Thank you, Maggie. That's going to be my question off of what Jeff said is that having worked on this model last year, and it does I'm assuming it's improved from what we had. It's got more bells and whistles. It's got more background data to give you a little finer point on the pencil when it does generate a number. What it didn't do then was give you any kind of indication of the relative risk of a scenario versus the relative risk of a competing scenario. And as far as and that's what Jeff was getting at with this input from Crest. It doesn't do that, and we have to do that. If the committee will be charged with setting priorities, you have to do that intuitively, right? I mean, there's no other way to do it, I suppose.
Jeff mentioned the CREST effort, which actually is an attempt to factor in several different types of risks and hazards to assist with prioritization, but the dynamic model does not have that function included in it. And I don't believe that the CREST model is ready now for application or use by the SSAB. It's still being evaluated by the 3 agencies.
Well, I think that's what we've said in the past is at headquarters, the funding profiles have been built on a certain set of assumptions and a certain set of priorities. Some appear to be risk-based, some, I don't know how they do it, but based on that, we have seen Oak Ridge's percentage of the pie decrease over time. And this committee has written recommendations addressing that fact. And we thought the way to combat that or make our argument that Oak Ridge deserved more was on a risk-based scenario backed up by mathematical models like this one to say this is what the curves will look like, these are the relative risks within it. Via a competing request from another site because they've got their own priorities and their own risks that someone else perhaps outside of our organization like CRESP has to be the sort of the arbitrator of what the relative risk is for these different kinds of waste streams. And ours is much more, I guess, heterogeneous than some of them at Oak Ridge or Hanford, where it's much more of a single type product. And that's the big difference I see is we got more landlords, we got different kind of products. So we have different types of many more different. If we look at the model, it's got a whole bunch of different projects on it, as opposed to one giant build a waste treatment plant and process liquid waste as they would at Hanford. So it makes our model much more complex. And I think without it, we really couldn't tell the story. So kudos to you guys for it.
Thank you. Gloria?
I'm just interested about the uranium 233 disposition money. When we first requested this like 2 years ago, that time we still talking about like a facility, maybe upgrade, and then downblending a lot of within the last 2 years, like the mechanism apparent change to a more like a direct disposal. So is still happy with this money? We can accomplish more with this, or can you comment a little bit?
Sure, I'd be happy to. You are exactly right that originally, of course, the plan was to modify the building at the National Lab where the U-233 material is currently being stored and to process that material in the building. Since then, there has been a new approach where we have identified that approximately 50% of the inventory can be directly either disposed of or provided to other DOE offices for their use. So the direct disposition campaign that's underway right now will remove about 50% of the inventory from Building 3019 at the lab and send it out west either for other programs to use or for direct disposal. And the money that we've received for fiscal year 12 is sufficient to support this campaign. We will be able to complete the shipment of what we call the zipper plates, the zero power reactor plates, this fiscal year with the money that we've received. It's critical that we also receive sufficient funding in 13 to complete or to move us toward completion of the disposal of the remainder of the material, which we refer to as the cuss material. And so the disposition of that is scheduled to be done in fiscal year 14. So we would need funding in 13 and 14 to complete the entire disposition campaign for about 50% of the inventory. A decision on the remaining 50% is pending. We are evaluating the alternatives and we'll be making a recommendation to headquarters for that second half of the inventory sometime this year.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Dave?
Just have one process suggestion. Consistent with last year, as you're all aware, we're forming a subcommittee, temporary subcommittee to help produce a recommendation from the SSAB to the DOE on formulation of the 2014 budget. Once we get the presidential budget for FY13, we'll have a solid data point for the formulation of another one of these DPM runs. And we need to go ahead and bring Alan in to talk us through that and see what questions that group has and work towards making a recommendation. My suggestion is that we've already had a few brave folk volunteer to help out on this effort. Anyone that's interested above and beyond that, I'd suggest at the break you go to Spencer and give him your name. And then Spencer can coordinate the first subcommittee meeting, which I'm going to guess is going to occur the week after next. Just logistically, that's probably how it will best work out. We've got scheduling flexibility on that, but again, we're trying to get to a recommendation in April, a submittal in April to headquarters, so to get a recommendation from you guys before too long would be helpful. So it usually involves 2 or 3 meetings, the final one being kind of a writing session. So again, anyone who's interested in participating, go to Spencer at the break, and we'll get the first meeting set up. Thanks.
Thank you. Jimmy?
Excuse me, Dave, would you repeat again what the objective of this meeting will be?
The overall objective, of course, is to have a recommendation produced by the SSAB to the Department of Energy on how to formulate the FY14 budget. This committee's first meeting will basically get dig down a little bit deeper into the budget considerations that we're working through to formulate that budget. They will have access to more detailed information than was presented tonight. Tonight was a general overview. The first meeting of this subcommittee would have the opportunity to look at one of these dynamic planning model runs that's actually tuned to the FY12 appropriation and the FY13 president's budget, and be able to see how the projects sequence out and offer comments on resequencing opportunities. So that's the objective.
And if I can add, Alan will be the DOE representative that will be working with the subcommittee and guiding you all through the process and helping to answer any questions that you have. So he'll be meeting with the subcommittee each week, or whatever the frequency is, to assist.
Right, Jim.
I have 1 or 2 points of interest just for my clarification. The 50% of the 233 that's going to be shipped out, does it include that came from molten salt reactor?
No, the materials that are in storage from the molten salt reactor will be part of the Phase 2 alternative analysis. No, they're not. Separate. It's separate. And so Phase 1 are the zero power reactor plates and the cuss material. That's the first 50% of the inventory. And then the remaining 50% is where the materials from the MSRE came from.
One more point with respect to the Hanford EM budget. At the present time, the Hanford EM, as I understand it, is primarily related to the tank waste. The tank waste is only a rather small portion of their total. So their budget's not going to decrease for a very, very long time. For instance, on a plutonium basis, the tank waste has 1/3 of the plutonium. The trenches have 1/3 of the plutonium, and the buried equipment has 1/3 of the plutonium. Those other 2 are just around the corner, if they ever resolve the tank waste.
Yeah, the Richland or the Hanford site actually has 2 offices. One is the Office of River Protection, which is responsible for the tank waste, the high-level waste I was referring to, and the construction of the waste treatment plant that Ron had referred to. There's also another part of the Hanford site which is a separate office which addresses all other environmental, media, and challenges that they have separate from the tank waste.